Despicable Me 2. Oh god, this franchise. Um, Remember I said I surprisingly enjoyed the first one? I think the second one is just the start of the end. Where I enjoyed this movie a little bit, but it was worse than I remember. Here's the thing. None of this franchise is particularly great. The first movie was fine for what it was going for. And I think in some ways they did choose a good angle for where to take this series after the first, but there's still a lot of problems here. So let's talk about what the good angle was. So after the first movie, of course, it was about a supervillain turning good and adopting these three girls as his children, and it next, so it now being him joining a spy agency meant to take down villains, and then this is where he meets a girl he falls in love with, and eventually becomes the mom of the three girls. This is a smart direction for what they laid in the first movie. Here's the problem here. I think this movie is lacking a lot of heart. For the main reason being here is, like, first of all, we have three girls in this movie, and you don't get a sense what these three girls even think about the fact that they don't have a mom, and that's kind of a major plot point in the movie. The only one that you get a little bit of is Agnes, but it's so brief that you almost forget it's a plot point in the movie. Most of this movie is just Kristen Wiig and Gru shenanigans throughout most of the movie, and excluding the three girls, which are kind of the heart of the first movie. You need them to have that heart with Gru, but they don't really do that in this movie. And also, there's a lot more minion shenanigans. There's a lot more long sequences of the minions just doing stuff. Because, of course, when this movie came out, the first one came out, minions were everywhere, and it became a big deal after that first movie. And that's fine, but they could have cut some of this down, cut some of it out. I mean, why do we need the purple evil minions? Like, why is this part of the climax? Couldn't you have the villain doing something else? And that's another thing that's really wrong with this movie. El Macho is a Mexican stereotype, very clearly. It is incredibly racist, to be honest. And I know a lot of people who watch this movie probably won't care, but it still is, like, very obviously a Mexican stereotype that's pretty awful. And yeah, that's a big problem with this movie. But I think this movie. But let me talk about what works about this movie, which isn't a lot, to be honest. The animation is slightly improved, but at the same time, it's slightly lazier. Like, they reuse models a lot more than they did in the first, and that's a little bit of a problem. But I like the song "Happy." That song is really good, and outside of this movie, it's an awesome song I listen to every once in a while. So yeah, there's that, and I like Kristen Wiig. She's a great actress, and she adds a lot to the character of Lucy, even though the line delivery and certain moments aren't the greatest. But she does add a lot to that character, and some of the humor works. It's just not as funny as the first movie, because I feel like the first movie had a better balance of real comedy and actual real heart to it, where this movie is just, it's mostly comedic antics, and most of them being annoying. Like, why do I need to see Kristen Wiig, like, smashing cupcakes and it ends Gru's face and things like that? It's like, okay, like, and that scene goes on so long, where she's now smacking out a minion on the floor, on the ground. It's like, this guy. It's like, okay, like, you kind of did this joke a minute ago, and it's, certain scenes like that. I don't know. It's not an awful movie. I did, like, when I rewatched this movie, like, it was like better and worse than I remember. It's worse than I remember because I don't remember this guy being as much as a Mexican stereotype as he is, the villain. And I also don't remember the movie being, like, as lacking in heart as it had, but it really was. And it did bug me, but it's okay, I guess. Fuck this movie.